It's time for the final word in sports all across the state. You're listening to Sports Talk with your hosts, Bill Kornbluth, Will Pelagic, and the Professor Tom Hayes. You've been waiting all day, so join the show now by calling 800-956-7266.
And good evening, everybody. Welcome back into Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network, here on a Talking Tuesday. Once again, these Talking Tuesdays come up very quickly once the season gets here. It's another Talking Tuesday number 2 of the regular season, with Will Muschamp and Dabo Sweeney having their weekly press conferences today. And today's press conference is obviously a little more meat on the bone because of the opponents the two teams will be facing this week. The Gamecocks at home against number 3 Georgia, and the number 2 Tigers on the road to Texas A&M. And the Gamecocks will go into the game as a ranked team themselves, number 24 this week by the AP and the coaches. We've got it all covered for you here tonight on Sports Talk, with comments from both coaches and your phone calls. 800-956-7266 is how you can reach us. Clemson gets a commitment today as well from a top linebacker targets in Kane Patterson out of Nashville, Tennessee, a player who had been committed to Ohio State. Thus far, the only player to decommit from Ohio State since all the issues erupted up there. More on him coming up later in recruiting. So we got a busy show for you. 800-956-7266 is the number. The news out of Will Muschamp today, a couple of newsy items. Number one is the reinstatement of Javon Charleston to the team now that he has entered into a PTI program. And Muschamp said that he met with him and he met with other school officials and laid out some rules for Charleston. And as long as he completes the PTI program or does what is required there and also adheres to the rules that Muschamp has, he'll be considered for playing time. And he did not rule him out of playing this week against Georgia, though I really don't see how that would be possible considering he's been suspended from team activities since back in June when he had the charges filed against him. And DJ Wanham did not practice this morning. The sprained ankle still being taken care of in a walking boot, but Muschamp is sure that he'll be able to play Saturday against Georgia, and they will need him. Will Pelagic here. Professor Tom Hayes is here. Will made the trip up the hill to Clemson today. How'd it go?
And just to add on that, Wanham, that's standard procedure, what they were saying on Sunday with Wanham. They were going to keep him out on Monday and Tuesday, have that boot immobilized, and then have him practice either by Wednesday or Thursday. And the fact that the reps will be as such for him, he should be able to be all right. As far as what Clemson has to say, nothing really newsy. The only real injury is Jordan Williams on the defensive line. He came up lame during that game and is still day-to-day, but Dabo Swinney doesn't seem very concerned about his availability. He seems like he will be ready to go for a game that is a familiar face, but in a different place. The Jimbo Fisher era begins at Texas A&M with a win last week over Northwestern State. And, of course, just like Clemson, the competition ramps up. They know a lot about the conceptual things with Jimbo Fisher, but not necessarily how he is going to utilize his personnel that he inherited. They're going to do a lot more spread than they have normally done under his time at Florida State, but there is still going to be a lot of the running game, a lot of the screen game. They ran for 500 yards against Northwestern State last week. And as far as the quarterbacks are concerned, no change. Trevor Lawrence and Kelly Bryant will both play. It's assumed that Bryant will get the start after starting the opening week against Furman. And the one thing, too, that you'll hear from Dabo is that this is truly a formula for Dabo Swinney now, and the fact that he wants opposing teams to be mindful of both quarterbacks. He wants opposing teams to have Trevor on the mind, Kelly on the mind. He sees the dual quarterback system as a weapon, not just something that keeps them both here currently through the season.
And have defense coordinators waste their time on things that they should be working on somebody else.
Almost like providing ghosts for the opposition.
Well, the one thing that that Dabo Swinney has done in the last few years is his teams go into matchups like this like it's their Super Bowl, because they know they're not going to get much juice from beating the Sisters of the Poor in the ACC. So when they get a chance to jump on and sink their teeth in some SEC meat, they're ready to eat.
It's really interesting hearing Dabo talk about Jimbo and the fact that it's a matchup that he doesn't really know a lot about. I almost think that's him being coy, because there are probably no two teams in the ACC that know each other better than Florida State and Clemson over the last 8 years, despite the fact that they basically split the last 8 matchups, including a stretch where Clemson won 3 in a row, and previous to that, Florida State won 3 in a row. So I think conceptually you're going to see a lot of what Florida State did under Jimbo, but he has a different kind of quarterback there in Kellen Mond. He's a year older than when we saw him last year against South Carolina. He was very one-dimensional in that game, yet still pulled out the victory against the Gamecocks corn. And he's a guy we'll see twice this year, and we'll know a lot more about the Aggies by the time we get to the end of October.
Yeah, Dabo and the Clemson staff, they know Jimbo's tendencies. They know what will happen under certain situations, what he might call for offensively, what he might want his defense to do. But what they don't know, of course, is the personnel. They have not recruited against Texas A&M a whole heck of a lot. I mean, they've gone into Texas to look for some players, but basically they'll be strangers to one another on the field. Now, you didn't mention this. Now, Will went up and covered Clemson Saturday, right?
Yes.
He went up today. So I just thought after the first 2 weeks of the season, we'd ask Dabo exactly how he feels you're doing so far.
You know, Will's so much improved in a year.
Yeah, so I just wanted to check in on that and make sure he still likes you.
Again.
Well, that's never going away.
That's fun.
That's never going away.
What Dabo did also, this is not in the sound that we played for you, but he was asked about the and we haven't really talked about this yet on the show, but the Colin Kaepernick endorsement with Nike, of course, Clemson's connection to Nike as a school that has Nike on their sleeves and everything like that. Dabo pointed to the Tiger Paw and said, that's the only logo that I care about. So if you were looking for Dabo to dip his toe into that controversy, he said, no, sir.
So I want to thank Florida State for taking the gas pipe last night and ruining my 5-0 start to the season. What a bunch of
I just think
jokers they were last night. They couldn't get out of their own way.
I just think that Florida State is a team that still just has a lot of talent. Maybe they need a new head coach. Oh wait. Maybe it's because the quarterback is not with them. Oh wait. I mean, they weren't 6-6 last year by accident, Corn.
Well, because their quarterback was, on crutches
No,
all
it
season.
had nothing to do with that.
Oh,
it had
yes,
everything
it
to do with what
did.
we saw last
They had
night.
to throw a true freshman quarterback who actually did okay, except that they couldn't keep him
It
upright.
had more to do
And
with
last night, I agree, their offensive line was pitiful in protecting Francois. He had very little time to look downfield and make some big plays. I mean, you got Cam Akers in the backfield. You want to get him the ball. He made some big plays, but they could not. When they got it into the red zone, they were pitiful.
As I point to my right, I say to you, Professor Tom Hayes, where are these battles won mostly?
In the trenches.
And guess what Florida State doesn't have?
But
which is amazing.
Men in the trenches.
I've seen this rerun before, and it was in 1987 to 88 when Florida State under Bobby Bowden went down to play Jimmy Johnson's Miami of Florida team opening game and got whitewashed 31-0. And that game last night looks just about as ugly as that one did, because Florida State. I said, well, I'll stay and see if they punch this touchdown in. When they didn't get it in, I said, I can now go to bed because they're not going to do anything.
If you're a Seminole or a Hurricane fan today, you're wondering
who's the best team in Florida.
Huh? And the Gators. I mean, the Gators won, but we'll find out more about them. I
want
to mention that the bad boy Alan Smothers had a 5-0 week.
Good for him.
So congratulations to him.
He still sucks.
The money coach 4-1. Pro, you went 4-1, and of course the defending champion, the king of all me, went 4-1. And let's see, 3-2. Let's see, Will, that'd be you. At 3-2,
just because
Matt the newsman went 3-2, Bobby Hart and the Big Kahuna went 3-2.
You're going to be big on that backdoor cover.
You know what?
Foreman, aren't you?
It was Brian who went 4-1. Sorry, Brian. 4-1. Fran Halloran, the money coach, he went 3-2. I don't have my glasses, so I can't even read these numbers. Kev Cohen went 2-3. So it's the bad boy out to the early lead in the competition. But you know what I like to say, Pro? This is a marathon. It is not a sprint.
It can get real early late.
The bad boy went out in front last year, didn't he?
I think he did.
Or late early. Which one is that?
This is the place to talk Tigers, Gamecocks, and more. Sports talk across the state on the South Carolina Radio Network.
Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network. A reminder, we tomorrow are on the road. It's the first stop of the in-season Palmetto Pride Pigskin in-season tour. We are going to be in Aiken. Very, very much looking forward to being in the alley tomorrow in Aiken. Fantastic venue for the border showdown that will be between Georgia and South Carolina this upcoming weekend. Of course, we'll be out there with the fine folks at KSX, our affiliate out there, which will be very, very cool to be once again with them. They had a big gathering for us last year. It was one of our best that we did. So certainly looking forward to all that coming up here tomorrow, and hope we see you out there for that pigskin preview event at the Tailgate Tavern in the alley in the heart of downtown Aiken. The folks at KSX will be broadcasting from 4 until 6. We'll be there at our regular time from 6 until 8, or if you're listening to us on 105.5 The Roar in Clemson, we're on from 7 until 9.
And, of course, you can get us on our feed on our website, SportsTalkSC.com, on Twitter at SportsTalkSC, through our Periscope. You can also get us on many of our stations, which stream via the TuneIn app or the Radio.com app. And our Columbia affiliate, The Point Radio, never interrupts us. You can always find us there, either over the air or through the app. So make sure you check us out that way. All right, a few notes here. Let's begin with Will Muschamp and his comments on Javon Charleston, who had been suspended back in June after his arrest on burglary and assault charges. Eventually, he got to the point where he was accepted into pretrial intervention. And today, Muschamp, for the first time, talked on the record about what is going on from a team standpoint and Javon Charleston.
Javon's been suspended from our team now for 2.5 months, and obviously this past week as a consequence for his inappropriate actions in June. His case has been thoroughly investigated during that time by the authorities. Javon's been accepted into the pretrial intervention program. I met with him on Sunday and discussed his situation at length. And after those meetings, I decided to reinstate him to the team. As long as he enters the PTI, handles his business, handles some things that I'm asking him to do as well, then we'll decide on as far as playing time and those things are concerned. And we'll decide that at the appropriate time, and that's not right now. Our players understand we've got a very high expectation for their behavior in representing the University of South Carolina, the need to handle themselves appropriately on and off the field, and there's consequences for their actions. And I really think that my track record speaks for itself on discipline. So I'm going to end it with that, and I don't have any other comment.
The only other thing he said when he was asked was if Charleston could play this week against Georgia. He said that has not been determined yet. So he didn't flat out say no. He didn't flat out say yes. He just said it had not been determined.
I'm going to say it for him. No, I don't think
so. I don't see how he could play.
Just special teams.
Yeah. Well, he's got to go. Doesn't he have to go through all the protocol?
Yep.
He
can't pray.
Orientation, practice, and all that kind of stuff. I would think
4 days of practice. I mean, having not gone through that, he'd have to do 4 practices before he could actually, hit anybody.
But I mean, they practiced Sunday, and then they practiced today, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. That could be his 4 days. It could.
And then you're going to put him on the field in an SEC game.
No, I'm not
Georgia?
saying that you will, but I think he would be eligible to do it from that standpoint.
And I think the second part of that, again, I made this analogy, and I don't mean to make sure that these two are related, but just from the standpoint of where Frank Martin said about Rob Felder, is that there were other things off the court, and of course, in this case, it'd be off the field for Javon Charleston, other things that he has to do, and I'm sure it's with his other community service or his pretrial intervention, certain other obligations, possibly some stuff involving classwork, keeping his grades up. I don't know how long it will be before we see Javon Charleston, but I doubt we see him at least before. I would say the Marshall game would be at least the soonest we might see him, maybe at Vanderbilt.
Okay, well, from a football standpoint, everything else aside, from a football standpoint, this was a guy that was slated to be your starter. So if he does everything he is supposed to do, he's back in the good graces. You can get him ready to go. Boy, that really helps them once again at the safety spot. Keeping in mind that they will be without Nick Harvey for the first half of the Georgia game as he sits out that one half suspension. New rankings out today, AP and coaches, they agree On the top 4 spots, Alabama, Clemson, Georgia, Ohio State. They differ at 5 with Wisconsin by the AP and Oklahoma by the coaches. By the way, Clemson had 12 first-place votes, I think, by the AP.
Sounds about right.
And a handful from the coaches.
They had like 11 in the first week, I think, so only one more.
The rest of the AP top 10, Oklahoma, Auburn, Notre Dame, Washington, Stanford. And so Washington was not hit real hard by the AP due to its loss to Auburn. LSU climbs up to number 11. So they made a big move. Virginia Tech made a big move to 12. South Carolina breaks in at number 24 in both polls. Florida is in at number 25. Michigan made a nice drop to 21, and Miami fell as well to 22. Tremaine Ankrum of Clemson named the ACC's co-offensive lineman of the week. Had a great game against Clemson, against Furman. 94% grade by the coaches, and he had a couple of knockdown blocks. Joe Blue from Newberry, the South Atlantic Conference Defensive Player of the Week. He only had 20 tackles.
Only.
In the game against Western Carolina that Newberry nearly won. And high school rankings for this week from the High School Sports Reports. Your number 1 teams in 5A, Dutch Fork. In 4A, Hartsville. In 3A, it's Dillon. In 2A, it's Abbeville. And in 1A, it is Lamar. And I want to give a shout out to Nick Shufo, son of our good friend Tony Shufo, who had his call up to the majors yesterday and started and caught the game for the Rays. He went 0 for 4. He did score a run in a 7-1 win at Toronto. He's 23, first-round pick back in 2013. It's taken him a little while. I mean, he has labored in the minors now going on 5 years, and he finally gets the call up. He hit 262 at AAA this year, 5 homers, 28 RBIs. He's played excellent defense. So, of course, he played high school ball at Wando, later at Lexington. He signed with USC. Or committed to play with USC, but then turned pro after getting that high draft pick.
Back to the polls, I really don't know how. Like, I think that whole AP and coaches poll model is broken. Like, I really don't think it means a whole lot when you have uneven grading scales. You have Oklahoma, who blew out an FAU. You have Washington, who played a legitimate game against Auburn, who gets dinged because they actually scheduled somebody of some clout. You have Alabama, who played a Power 5 out-of-conference game against Louisville. You have Clemson. Again, no offense, Clemson played an FCS team. So, again, it just, to me, it's very incongruous to me to come up with these rankings. And I know it's a talking point. I know we've always done it this way. But I just think that whole thing is broken. We really shouldn't have polls until October. And I know that the playoff poll is the one that really matters. And the committee comes out with that later in the year. And that's good on them for doing that. But just, I don't like anything that could negatively influence these pollsters because of the fact, or not the pollsters, but the committee itself. Because to me, we really don't get an accurate read until at least October on any of these teams and how good they actually are.
But I mean, from the historic standpoint, people want something to talk about, so you give it to them.
Yeah,
it's stupid.
It's a fan thing now. They used to mean something. They don't mean anything anymore.
No,
it gives talk show hosts, talking heads, and fans something to talk about and crow about. I mean, look, South Carolina put out a release today about their team being back in the top 25 for the first time since 2014, and well, they should.
Speaking as a talk show host, I can tell you right now, we don't need it. I can tell you right now, we don't need it. We got plenty to talk about.
Got no problem with it.
We have nothing.
It's a good indicator of what the experts around the country think is happening in college football.
I have no use for it.
Now, I will say this: the coaches poll is a farce because we all know the coaches don't really know what's going on because they're so tuned in. You ask a coach, I mean, how can they vote really?
They don't,
unless coaches are just putting on. But you ask them about a team on their schedule down the road, they've got no clue. They'll tell you, I'm focused on the next game. So if you asked Will Muschamp, Mississippi State's in there. No, I'm sorry. Give me a team. It's Florida. Florida's breaking in. Ask him a question about Florida and how he voted for Florida. I mean, he would tell you, I don't know because I'm not paying any attention to Florida.
It's because the SIDs fill out the polls.
Well, I know that. I know that.
That's why you call it the SID poll.
Yeah, they call it the coaches poll.
It's not,
and they got a big sponsor.
It's all very much.
And it was something that actually was created by USA Today many years ago when we really didn't need another poll, but USA Today felt it was necessary to start a poll.
We need more talking from the coaches, which we'll get next from head coach Dabo Swinney of Clemson here on Sports Talk. Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network. If you want to join us on the program, feel free to do so. 800-956-7266. You can tweet us at SportsTalkSC. We've got people who offered their thoughts on some of the comments that we posted to our Twitter. Remember, we have the extended segments that you can listen to from both Will Muschamp and Dabo Swinney at our website, SportsTalkSC.com. So if you want to hear a little bit more than what we actually bring to you on the program, just because you do want to hear from us every once in a while, we have that for you on our website.
Good.
Oh, you want more?
No, that's good. That's good. 800-956-7266 is the phone number if you'd like to join in on the program. Email talkback at sportstalksc.com. On Twitter at sportstalksc. We'll hear from Swinney here coming up in a couple of moments, talking about Texas A&M later. Muschamp, more from him, kind of his overview of this week's game. You know, he's facing his alma mater, team he has not beaten since he's been the head coach at USC. Of course, it's only been 2 games, so he'll try and get his first. This is a series that Georgia has dominated over the years, winning 50 games already against the Gamecocks. Over the last 10 years, they have split it, but Georgia has won the last 3. But I will say this. I'm picking the Gamecocks to win the game. Of course, I am taking the points, but I think they win straight up.
Really?
Good Gamecock teams at home against Georgia, play close and win. I think this sets up for a Gamecock win. I know Georgia's got players. I know they've got speed in the backfield. They've got great tight ends. Quarterback is excellent. Defense is big and fast. I get all that, but they're like that every year. So there's got to be a reason why South Carolina has won in the past, and South Carolina has won in the past, like with Connor Shaw and with Garcia, when they've had excellent quarterback play, a good running game, and a stout, if not stout, then very good defense, a good enough defense. I see all that together for South Carolina, and they got the star in Debo. Debo Samuel, when you think about it, will he be the best player on the field when they play Georgia?
He might be the best decoy on the field.
No, you don't decoy with him. You
no,
get the
but
ball
I'm
in his
saying
hands.
if Georgia wants to swing their coverage over there, you better go to the other side. And then once they're not paying attention to him, then he can blow you up. The one advantage that South Carolina will always have against Georgia is South Carolina always has a ton of players from the state of Georgia who are really hyped up. If you went behind a Georgia player on South Carolina's team that's starting next week and say boo, they'll hit the ceiling because they're fired up to play against the home state school.
Just to compare.
Emotional mamby-pamby. You still got to go out and make plays. You got to play, great defense. You can't turn it over. You got to take advantage of being at home with the crowd behind you. These are all things that South Carolina, a good South Carolina team, can use to its advantage. I think they win. I think they win straight up. I'll take the points. I will take the points when the time comes.
Comparatively, with Clemson and A&M, there really is no history, or at least no connection between the two states. Clemson and Texas don't really go against each other in recruiting. It's only happened for Clemson and Texas A&M once since 2004. That was back when Dabo Swinney was an assistant. It was a butt whooping, is what he talked about. 26-7 in that contest at Kyle Field. That's the last time and only time he has been at Kyle Field. Clemson actually hasn't won. This is from Ross Taylor in the state of Texas in a game since 1959. That was in the Blue Bonnet Bowl when they beat TCU. But the one thing that is familiar is the man who used to coach at Florida State, Jimbo Fisher. Here is what he had to say, he being Dabo, about Jimbo.
Defensively, they're stout. I mean, they got some big dudes up front. At number 34 he's a earth mover. 8's a very good player. 46 led the SEC in sacks last year. Very, very, very talented. They got a lot of guys back on defense that started at different times last year. Very good in the secondary. I think their safeties are as good as we're probably going to see. These are really, really talented players at safety. I'd say all 4 of their starters in the secondary are probably going to play in the NFL. Pretty easy to see that. They've got size and length and great looking on the hoof type guys at backer. But impressed with them up front. That's kind of where it all starts. And their D coordinator came from Notre Dame. He was a guy that was at Wake Forest, and I was really, really happy when he left and went to Notre Dame. because he was one of the best that we saw year in and year out. Does a great job schematically, especially coaching those guys up in the secondary. I think they do as good a job as anybody at route reading and diagnosing the play, reading the quarterback, and just really being disciplined on their keys. So, very impressed with schematically what they do. And then, studying all the Notre Dame stuff and kind of some of the things where they've evolved. And then obviously just the one game to go on this year, but it should be a challenge. Offensively, very impressed with their quarterback. And the more I watched of him, really impressive athlete. I've met him. He actually came here. I think came in camp one summer, but he's incredibly athletic, but he's got a lot of moxie. And, he kind of won me over when I'm watching him run the lead option, and then he pitches the ball, and then he's 20 yards down the field leading the way blocking. He's not a prima donna type of guy. This kid is gritty and very easy to see, how he's won his team and has become a great leader for him. Really impressive. Made some big-time throws. I know they played a team that really did not match up well with them last week, but he made some really, really nice throws. Great throw on the sideline. Two really big-time throws to their tight end. 81 is a guy transferred in there that I think he kind of fits the mold of what Jimbo has always had in the past at the tight end position. They had a nice little chemistry going in game one. So they rushed for 500 yards. Again, I know the team didn't match up with them well, but it's hard to rush for 500 yards. I don't care who you play. And I thought their back did a tremendous job. Five had 240 yards, and they're really talented outside. If you really study their roster, these are really highly recruited guys, highly recruited up front. They're all 300-plus pounders in the offensive line. So it's a complete football team that we're getting ready to play.
That's Dabo Swinney again. Only 4 on-time meetings between A&M and Clemson. A&M won the first 3, a home-and-home in 74 and 75. The aforementioned game in 2004, where Dabo Swinney was an assistant under Tommy Bowden. And then Clemson broke the 3-game streak with a 25-24 win in 05 in Death Valley. The head coach at A&M in that time was Dennis Francione.
Dennis Francione. Yeah, he had a few things back in the day go against him. Texas A&M 59-7 in their opener in front of 95,000 announced at Kyle Field, and they had 40 first downs, 758 yards. I mean, I know you're playing against a smaller program, but still 758 yards.
I think they were trying to prove a point.
240 yards rushing by Williams on 20 carries. That's 12 yards per carry.
You think Florida State wants a do-over?
Well, not after one game. I mean, I think people around Tallahassee would tell you that it was time for Jimbo to go, in their opinion. And listen, let's don't pile on. People are so quick to want to pile on or jump off after just one loss. I mean, I know Florida State looked totally out of sorts last night. I think they're a team that's going to get better as the season goes on. I mean, give them a chance here a little bit.
I think if they try to sell Willie Taggart a Christmas tree, that we'd be lucky if he had pine needles on it. Because you remember Jimbo Fisher threw out his Christmas tree in November after he got his walking papers.
Yes. That was a fake Christmas tree, by the way.
Yeah.
It was not. No, you know the story on that, don't you?
Yes.
What's the story?
The story was, I guess his wife was trying to pull it up or something like that.
No. He hired somebody to come move the tree out of the house.
Yeah.
And he threw it out in front of the house. And Jimbo didn't know it. And so, people going by the house, I guess, alerted the media. Media goes by there. Oh, look, Jimbo's throwing his Christmas tree out.
Yeah.
He's definitely leaving.
Scrooge.
That came down. I remember that story came down the day of media day at the ACC championship game.
Right.
And that became a topic of conversation for, in particular, Mark Ricks, being from Florida.
More from Muschamp and Corn's recruiting report when we return as we continue on a Talking Tuesday here on Sports Talk.
Now back to Sports Talk, South Carolina's most listened to sports talk show for more than 30 years.
Welcome back to Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network. Call us 800-956-7266, Periscope at SportsTalkSC, and on Twitter at SportsTalkSC. We got a question via Periscope, which we are certainly welcoming to have you put up. Phil, you were asked directly by somebody if South Carolina does do the deed and defeat Georgia. Does this mean that South Carolina has a red carpet to win the East?
No, it doesn't. But I think it'll be in great shape as I look at the remainder of their schedule. I mean, this Georgia game is huge. I know coaches and players, and South Carolina's coaches and players were very subdued today in talking about it. They didn't say much of really anything. Mm-hmm. They were being very careful, making sure they're very focused. Yeah, but let's say they do win. I mean, there's still 7 more SEC games to go, and along the way, there's always landmines. That Ole Miss game down at Oxford is looking tougher by the week because Ole Miss has got an offense.
Tennessee's not, by the way.
Tennessee does not look tougher by the week. Kentucky, we'll see what they've got. If Kentucky finally beats Florida, they're going to be feeling good about themselves.
Missouri,
listen, they got a dangerous quarterback.
As long as this offensive coordinator doesn't hold him back, which I think he might eventually.
So no, there's no red carpet. But I'll say this: if they can win that game, then they can afford to lose one somewhere else and still be in great shape to win the division. Because I do think that if you can scrape through with one loss, looking at and beat Georgia, looking at the teams that Georgia has to play still after they play South Carolina down the road, they may take another loss or two, and you'll have the tiebreaker over Georgia. That'll be very important. I don't see anybody else in that division escaping with fewer than 2 defeats.
I would venture to say, of the likely scenarios, I would say it's more likely that South Carolina beats Georgia and loses twice outside of the Georgia game on the SEC schedule rather than lose to Georgia and run the table.
Well, the key point of this particular season for Georgia is
in the SEC.
They always have to play one of their 10,000 rivals, and that's Auburn. But this year they also have to go to the other Death Valley.
You are so salty when it comes to Georgia, man.
No, they do. I mean, everything is a rival. Yeah. Georgia Tech is a rival. Tennessee is a rival.
Florida.
Florida's a rival. The only team
you forgot Auburn.
I said Auburn.
I'm sorry.
The team that thinks it's a rival, but Georgia says no, they're not a rival. Is the team they're playing this Saturday?
That's true.
In South Carolina's mind, it's a big game and it's kind of a rival. I don't think Georgia holds South Carolina in that same position as being a rival. Like you said, they've got too many bigger, older rivals. But when South Carolina was beating Georgia those years under Spurrier, and it was a big game both ways across the border. So this will be a big game, no doubt about it.
It's a big game because of the supremacy that it gives the victor, I would say.
Let's go to Will Muschamp, and then we'll give you recruiting. Muschamp talking earlier today at his presser in Columbia. Here's some of the opening comments he had to say and kind of setting the stage for this CBS 3:30 kickoff in Columbia.
Got Georgia here at Williams-Brice on Saturday, 3:39 kick on CBS. Certainly looking forward to that. Got great respect for Coach Smart and his staff and know most of those guys, and they do a fantastic job. They got a really good football team with a bunch of good players, a bunch of guys that played for a national championship last year, and that experience certainly is benefiting them moving forward. So we're looking forward to it. We got a good start today in practice. We need to finish the week in our preparation for a very good Georgia football team. I would go over their depth chart and all, but they didn't send us one, so I guess I can cover it if you guys ask me questions. Injury report: K.C. Crosby's good to go. He practiced today. DJ Warnham did not practice today, but I expect him to practice tomorrow. Chavis Dawkins is probably questionable, but I would say more doubtful. And Mon Denson will play. So that can open up for any questions.
Will, looking back at last year when Fromm threw the ball, he did take some downfield shots, but a lot of times he worked the edges. How difficult is that as a defensive back to play, especially on some of those shorter routes where he's getting rid of the ball pretty quick?
Well, most of them are RPOs, and they do a really good job, and they're very effective in last year's game with that. They've got some really good space players, and you talk about Terry Godwin, Miko Hardeman, Crumpton. I mean, they've got some really, really fast guys. And the one thing that I would say, one of the many good things that would jump out at me is their team speed overall, not just skill-wise offensively, but defensively, and it really shows up on special teams. So, but most of those were very accurate with the ball, and I don't know that Jake totally gets the credit he deserves. I watched the guy in the college football playoff against Oklahoma, made some big-time throws in that game, some longer throws down the field out, the field corner, the digs across the middle, the high-low concepts. And then against Alabama in the championship game, put them in a position to win the game. So he's very accurate with the football and speaks for itself what he did as a true freshman.
Georgia won their game pretty handily Saturday, too. How much can you learn about a team rewatching film from a game where they win by, 45 points?
Well, just different guys in different spots. I think that we all know each other pretty well from a coordinator standpoint, from a play caller standpoint. There'll be some new wrinkles and some different things they've worked in the offseason, sure, that we will have as well. So, again, I think that, knowing kind of their structure and our structure and how we do things, this game has been game planned for this summer. So we're just kind of brushing up the game plan this week, and I'm sure they're doing the same.
Out of that, what can you guys take away after playing Coastal, going up against now a very good team, one of the best probably in the country?
Well, again, I think, first of all, with young players having the opportunity to play in front of 80,000 people, that's the first big-time exposure for a lot of those young men that they'll have. So that's exciting for them. But, again, I think, just gelling together, making communication. Those are things I look for. We didn't have a lot of issues, especially on the offensive side of the ball, with communication. We're very efficient. We're very effective in the things we do with new coordinator, new play caller, some new moving parts. And I thought, in all three phases, we functioned pretty well.
Okay, Will Muschamp, more from the Gamecocks coach coming up for you a little bit later on this Talking Tuesday. Let's talk recruiting now. We begin with the latest commitment for Clemson. He is Kane Patterson from Nashville. He announced his commitment this afternoon. He had previously been committed to Ohio State, but when everything went down up there, he decommitted, and he visited Clemson this past weekend. And the Tigers had an inside edge in that his father was a teammate of Dabo Swinney at Alabama. And Patterson had really wanted to go to Clemson. Clemson did not offer him until after he decommitted from Ohio State. I think, in all honesty, the Tigers had their eyes on some other linebackers they did not get. And when this young man became available and they had a spot available, they offered. And that kind of put the wheels in motion here. 6'1", 225. Fifth linebacker in the class and 24 overall. Cornerback Jamie Robinson, got a chance to catch up with him last night. Big-time USC target, also a big-time Georgia target. He visits USC unofficially Saturday for the game. He's already been in officially, and he said that he'll be there as a neutral observer. He said, quote, "I'm a free agent. I like South Carolina, and I like UGA, so I just want to see what it boils down to." And so he'll go in with an open mind, so to speak. He's been to USC several times, including the official visit in June. He's been to Georgia unofficially. Both are recruiting him very hard. He said South Carolina is recruiting him the hardest right now. It's going to be a while, he believes, until he makes a decision, unless just something overcomes him and he decides to go ahead and make a decision. Otherwise, he'll take it to signing day probably in December. He said USC, Georgia, and Auburn have separated from the rest of the teams in terms of their interest level. Safety, Dedrick Holmes of Evans, Georgia, and he's 19 class. And 2020 defensive back Fred Davis of Jacksonville, they, too, plan to make an unofficial visit to USC for the game Saturday. Basketball, point guard Trey Jackson of Blythewood made an unofficial to USC last week. He met with Frank Martin. He got an offer from Frank Martin. He said it means a lot to him right now. He's expecting more offers to come. He's not scheduled an official with the Gamecocks. He is considering one. He went to Murray State last month. Last weekend, he went to Winthrop, and he really likes Winthrop, and he likes Pat Kelsey. He will take an official to Florida Gulf Coast September 14th, looking at visiting Iowa State September 21st. 19 points, 4 assists per game last season. 5'7" point guard Russell Jones of Westwood committed to Winthrop. Top of the hour break. More from Swinney, more from Muschamp, more from us on a Talking Tuesday.
2 of Sports Talk up next with your hosts Phil Kornbluth, Will Pelagic, and the Professor Tom Hayes. Don't leave us hanging. Join the show, 800-956-7266.
We are back, hour number 2, Sports Talk, here on a Talking Tuesday from downtown Columbia. Phil Kornbluth, Will Pelagic, Professor Tom Hayes. If you want to join in on the program, comment or question, observation, criticism, or praise, 800-956-7266, the number. Email talkback@sportstalksc.com, on Twitter @SportsTalkSC. Still to come tonight, more from Muschamp, more from Sweeney, and a visit from the president of Darlington, Kerry Tharp, here on Sports Talk. Let's go to Glenn in North Charleston. We hit the phones here on Sports Talk. Glenn, how you doing?
I'm doing all right. How y'all?
Good.
I was thinking, y'all, this new hurry-up offense is going to take a lot of these top teams by surprise. I hope the defense is ready to get on that field and stop the running game. I think it's real smart to put Debo as a wide receiver. Bryant is a great weapon, too. And I also think A.J. Turner is going to improve. But I'm not really impressed with him as specialty team or a punt returner yet. But I have to see further. His speed is not like Debo as far as kick return or but Debo and Rico is a threat y'all haven't mentioned yet. And another reason why I think South Carolina's going to do great, it's going to be a weird year this year when Hawaii beats Navy, and nobody has really reported on how Hawaii did their deed, but they win a game. I mean, that is history. When Hawaii beats Navy, and they never win a game. So, I mean, if Hawaii's going to win this year, watch out, Carolina. This is their year.
Well, the thing about Hawaii, you know, they and Navy did have to sail out there, so they had to, you know, they had some travel issues, I'm thinking. So.
But they could stay at Pearl Harbor. They got a place to stay out there. In fact, I watched the movie last night, Pearl Harbor.
Oh, did you?
Until I kind of know the ending.
Well,
so.
I know the ending, yeah. Navy's coach is Hawaii
See, I
grad.
thought what I said was bad. Y'all were worse.
Yeah, Navy's coach is a Hawaii grad. He played at Hawaii.
Yeah.
Neo Matalolo.
Mm-hmm.
Nicely done.
Yeah,
Like Tua Tagovailoa.
very much.
The Bulldogs of Georgia have now finally issued their game notes. I hope they sent some to Will Muschamp. He was looking for some earlier today.
They didn't put a depth chart in there, though. They did not put a depth chart. I already scrolled.
Yes, you are right. They did not include the depth chart,
which I find rather curious.
Well, you pretty much know who's going to play. You got to be careful, too. You look at Georgia, one big offseason pickup for them, and what a pickup it was. Demetrius Robertson, big-time receiver, goes out to Cal, plays out there for a few years. He's from Savannah, transfers back. He's one of those guys that got the free pass to play right away, had a big impact on their game the other day. Can't say enough about DeAndre Swift and how talented he looks out of Philadelphia, a guy that South Carolina recruited and knows well. And, of course, Jake Fromm, 12 of 16 the other day, 2 touchdowns. He was very much like Bentley was. His quarterback rating was 198.67. I think Jake's was 193 point something after the game the other day. Just a chance for them to loosen up. This should be an interesting quarterback battle. We're talking about an established guy nationally in Fromm, and one who, if he can win this game, I think this becomes the breakthrough game for Jake Bentley. This is when Jake Bentley can announce himself to the rest of the country. Steven Garcia announced himself when the Gamecocks beat Alabama his year. Of course, Connor Shaw announced himself multiple times with all the big wins he had. This is a chance for Bentley to do it.
Speaking of announcing themselves as a starting quarterback, we still don't really have a real starting quarterback at Clemson. And Dabo Sweeney took more questions about just the consternation between the two. And, of course, I had to come in and ask him the question that probably made him most mad.
Did you save the day?
I didn't.
Well, I just think that's the character of our team. And I think Kelly is. I mean, it starts with him. He's the guy that's been here. He's going to set that tone, and he's a great leader. He's just a great young man. I mean, he's a great person, and he gets it. I mean, he understands. And that's why I'm just one of the reasons that I'm so proud of him, because he's been a great example to his teammates. Everybody wants to be the guy, but everybody has to earn it. And he understands that, and he's handled it well. He's embraced Chase, and he's embraced Trevor very well, and has been great leaders for those guys. And then at the same time, he got turn around and compete. So it's been awesome. And then you throw in the fact that Trevor and Chase are just great kids. I mean, these are same thing, just like Kelly. They're just good people. I mean, they just happen to be good quarterbacks, but they're good people. They're just really good young people that respect the process and respect the competitive situation and just try to focus on what they control and not lose focus on who they are as a person. So it's been great to watch them compete.
There's been a couple of multi-quarterback systems in the country of prominent programs. Do you think it's a wave of the future just to kind of keep everybody happy and not have all these transfers, or do you think this is just a special circumstance with a couple of teams?
Nah. I mean, I just think it's just a year-by-year basis. I mean, I ain't trying to keep nobody happy. I had 2 transfer. I had 2 quarterbacks that were here last year that aren't here anymore. So I ain't trying to keep nobody happy. I ain't trying to keep nobody from transferring. I just want to win. And that's just the best player going to play. I mean, I love all my players, and I try to encourage all these guys, and you try to get them better year in and year out. But at the end of the day, the best player is going to play. And just because you were the best player one year, that doesn't mean you're the best player the next year. That you don't carry any of that over. And that's just the culture of our program. So that's why you go recruit. I go recruit every year. And if a freshman can beat out a senior, so be it. I've had that happen many times, but I don't see it as a wave of the future or any of that stuff. I just think that, I mean, that's just a team by team, year by year basis based on your situation, your competitive situation, who's there, who's returning, who's coming in. What's the competitive balance and nature of that? I mean, that's a year to year thing. But I just try to do what's right and try to love and serve my players. I ain't trying to keep nobody happy. I just want to win and do it the right way.
You heard him say it at least 3 or 4 times. I'm not trying to keep anybody happy. I just want to win. Now, again, I'm not saying that he doesn't believe that he can win with both. I'm just saying it's not the kind of thing that's been done very often and done very successfully very often. I think of the Florida situation with Leak and Tebow. Can you think of any other situations where it's worked?
Ray Goff and Matt Robinson at Georgia.
South Carolina, 1984, it worked as beautiful as it ever has. They had a designated starter in Alan Mitchell, and then they had their designated finisher in Mike Holt, and they accepted their roles. And until they lost to Navy,
and then Mike Holt,
they went that way. Yeah, and they weren't going to mess with success, but it worked great for them through 9 games, I think it was. And so that's probably as good an example of a 2 quarterback system working for you. You had 2 completely different types of quarterbacks. Mitchell was the runner and the option guy, not a particularly good passer, and Holt was the guy that just had a magic touch. He could just make something out of nothing. The big play, the big arm, junior college transfer, and so that worked extremely well for them.
I just feel like you're welcoming the Oliver Twist moment where one of them finally says, I want some more.
Well, let's look at this. This Texas A&M game, I think, is going to tell us a lot about the future of the quarterback position this season. Let's see. We know who's going to start. Let's see how long he goes and what the situation is when the change is made. But more importantly, let's see who takes, if it's a close game, let's see who's taking most of the snaps in the fourth quarter.
Pretty sure you'll probably see the same situation. You'll see Kelly get the first quarter. You'll see Trevor get the second quarter.
But why would you do that if Kelly is moving the team and they're scoring? Why would you disrupt it?
Because you have to see what you have out of Trevor.
Sports Talk is the sports talk show of Main Street, South Carolina. From the coast to the mountains, we cover it all.
We continue on Sports Talk South Carolina Radio Network. We're going to talk about the crazy finish at Darlington coming up with Kerry Tharp, president of Darlington Raceway. Still want to hear from you as well at 800-956-7266, where we are brought to you by Founders Federal Credit Union. Whether it's low rates or high rewards, using select Founders credit cards on clothes, school supplies, a new computer, even college tuition will help prepare your kids for their first day of school. Apply online at foundersfcu.com/visa.
All right, a little bit more from Will Muschamp, talking Tuesday here on Sports Talk, talking in Columbia, talking in the upstates. And Muschamp, of course, all focused, completely tuned in to what is ahead for his team. The first part of the week, they really spent a lot of time on themselves, getting themselves fixed from whatever it is that was bothering them coming out of their last game. And then they, of course, focus their attention on the opponent, which will be the mighty Georgia Bulldogs. Excellent football team, of course, ranked number 3 in the country. The team that played for it all last year might very well play for it all again this year. Here's more from Muschamp from his presser earlier today, looking ahead to the Bulldogs.
Well, they have good players. That's the starting block is, you look at guys, and who are we going to have a hard time blocking? Who can we win against in coverage? And then schematically, they do a really good job of taking away the things you probably do well. You're going to have to play a little left-handed at times to be able to get some plays versus them, to figure out how you can create some explosive plays, how you can challenge them vertically down the field. So I think it all starts with players. They got really good players. They've recruited extremely well, but then it goes from the coaching, schematically, the development part of it, that they do a really good job.
I don't know how much you've seen of DeAndre Baker, their cornerback. If some, what are your impressions of him as a secondary coach?
Extremely impressed. The guy's got really good ball skills down the field. He's a very physical player as well. He's a willing tackler, but he's got really good length on the line of scrimmage. He can win on the line of scrimmage, and then he wins a lot of 50-50 balls down the field. He's got a really good knack for playing the football down the field. He's got a lot of confidence, which is a corner in our league. In any league, you got to have confidence, and that's a but I knew him coming out of Northwestern High School, and I think he's an outstanding player.
Do you get the sense a guy like Debo wants to play these type of guys and measure himself in that way? Do you
Absolutely.
think he'll be sort of rise to the occasion?
I'm sure Bake wants to play him. I think that works both ways. I think that the good players I've been around, didn't matter who lined up across from them, let's go play. I'm going to play against the best guys, and that's I'm sure that's being seen both ways.
I've heard Javon and Donnell say earlier today that the big thing is being physical in this game. I know you mentioned physicality being a big thing since you got here. Do you think if your team is the more physical team on Saturday, this is kind of the almost statement game for your program?
Well, again, I think that, any time in our league, and having been a part of our league as a player and a coach now for a long time, winning on the line of scrimmage in critical games like this is pivotal. To be able to stay balanced on offense, be able to run the ball, be able to throw the ball, protect the quarterback, to be able to stop the run defensively. Those are all things that are critical in every game, but certainly in this game as well. And I would say it would be a big indicator of who wins the football game is who wins on the line of scrimmage on Saturday.
What impresses you about Jake Fromm, and what do you think is the key going up against a guy like him this year?
Well, I think, as a true freshman, having been a part of this league for a long time, to see what he accomplished as a starting quarterback was pretty amazing. To go with his first start up at Notre Dame, to make a couple of throws that he made in critical situations to help win the game, was pretty amazing. To go down the line with the bullet on your chest and you're winning the Southeastern Conference Championship, you're going to the college football playoff in that stage in Pasadena, and obviously in the national championship game. And, I thought the guy performed extremely well. So I've got all the respect in the world for him. He's very accurate with the football. He's a competitor. He obviously handles the moment extremely well, and he's got the respect of his teammates. So as far as that position's concerned, I don't know what else you're looking for.
All right, there you go with Will Muschamp talking about the Georgia Bulldogs. And again, I don't think the importance of this game can be overhyped from a South Carolina standpoint. If you're Will Muschamp in year 3, you've been preaching toughness, you've been preaching physicality. You've been building. You've been recruiting. You have, a couple of nice wins on your resume at South Carolina, but you do not have that huge breakthrough win. You haven't beaten Clemson in your 2 years. You haven't even been competitive with them. Here's a chance, I think, by all accounts, people will look at South Carolina. I know the national talking heads, most of them won't give them much of a chance. They'll see the 10-point spread. They'll see Georgia and everything that Georgia has. They'll think about the history and say South Carolina's got no chance in this game. I see it. I see it otherwise. I think this is the perfect setup and scenario for South Carolina to get that big win.
Well, I mean, you think about wins against ranked opponents. I mean, you think about the Tennessee game a couple of years ago. That game was a ranked opponent. You were a 13-point underdog in that game. In my mind, this is South Carolina's best opportunity to slay the dragon, basically, because you think about next year, you're going to have to take either a senior quarterback in Jake Bentley on the road against a team he's never beaten, or you're going to have to take a true freshman or a redshirt freshman, depending on who's the starter next year if Bentley leaves after this year, into a road environment. So you're probably not going to win that one. And then you probably have to wait for the maturation of whoever is your starting quarterback beyond next year in order to get another shot at Georgia. So, I mean, this is South Carolina's best shot at Georgia, not only where they sit currently with the health of their football team, where they get them in the schedule, and also combined with what Georgia's lost on defense.
Well, I think Georgia paid South Carolina a compliment last year, and I would agree with them that, they didn't take advantage of some opportunities they had, but South Carolina stood there toe-to-toe to Georgia into the fourth quarter. And that's when they had the two senior studs back there in the backfield. So this team, if they can play like they did last year and then take advantage of the opportunities they have offensively, they can win this football game.
Yeah, part of it is belief. I mean, swagger, playing with the belief, playing with the swagger, acting like you believe you're the best team on the field. And then, of course, going out there and doing it. But I think a lot of it has to do with internal confidence and playing with some belief that, yes, we can beat this team and we can win others down the road and we can win the SEC East. I think South Carolina is going to pull off the upset on Saturday. And I'll take the points, but I think they'll still do it straight up. All right, 800-956-7266. Let's hit the phones once again. We go to Alex in Myrtle Beach. Kerry Tharp coming up from Darlington. Hello, Alex.
Hey. I just elated to hear that, you had the Darlington Raceway president calling. Several nights ago, I recorded South Carolina Educational TV, the history of Darlington Raceway. I was planning to watch it tonight. So the timing's perfect. And I do want to get to one day my first NASCAR race at Darlington. I don't know if it's going to be early this season, but sometime I plan to get to a NASCAR race. But may I also comment about the Clemson quarterback situation?
Sure.
I'm a Gamecock fan, and it pains me to even say this, but I have to say I went back and forth between both games. And first of all, I was shocked to see that Trevor Lawrence. I didn't know he was like 6'5". He was towering above all the other players, many of the players. And I saw that one play, a broken play. He threw it right in there, and it pains me to say this. But I have to say that there's a future not star but superstar. Dabo Swinney can completely recruit around this guy. He can bring in the top receivers in the country, everybody, offensive linemen. And I'm looking at things objectively, unlike me and the media today. We're not going to go there because it's a sports show. And but Dabo Swinney has just landed a diamond. And yeah, I did read Gene Safikoff had an article I read, and maybe I'm looking some of that from his article I read in Post and Courier today. But Dabo Swinney he's done it again. Hit a home run over the Green Monster. And one last thing, if I may say about Nike. I'm not, both my uncles served in Vietnam. I'm finished with Nike. Have a nice night.
Appreciate it, Alex.
Thank you. Thank you for your phone call. Maybe he's right. I mean, I think that the kid's got all the skills, all the talents in the world.
He's the best true freshman quarterback I've seen, granted, against the competition.
But is he ready for SEC football under the lights on the road?
We'll find out. speaking of Darlington, we'll go racing next. We had quite a time at Darlington County last weekend, Corn. Despite the rain, it held off enough for us to see a pretty good race.
I got to say this. Every time you go to Darlington for a race, it gets better. And going back to 1950, 51 was better than 50. 52 was better than 51. 2018 was better than 2017. Kerry Tharp, El Presidente of Darlington. Congratulations on a great weekend and a great day on Sunday. I thought the place looked great.
Well, thank you, Phil. We appreciate that. It was great to see you all there. And, yeah, we thought that the track was shining. Our new project was completed. The seats looked great. The stands were at near capacity. Just the way that the racetrack is prepared and presented for the event. And certainly when you go to Darlington, Labor Day weekend, and you start the race, the sun's still up, and then you spill into the dusk and have some of the prettiest sunsets coming over there between turns 3 and 4. It just really sheds a beautiful landscape on the area. But yes, I agree with you. It was a great weekend of racing. I thought the track, like you said, I thought the property was outstanding. I think the fans, by and large, had an excellent time.
So before we talk about the race, you guys, you were thrown a monkey wrench there by Mother Nature as you were getting into your pregame show and Hanson performing, and you were into the driver introductions. You were early into that, and then the lightning bolts were happening away from the track, and you guys had to throw up the weather warning and get people out. What's the process within NASCAR and within your operation to get 60,000 people out and secured when something like that happens?
Well, we certainly earned our keep Sunday night. I can tell you that. I've been at races where the inclement weather plan has had to be implemented and the race was actually going on. So that in itself is not as difficult, I don't think, as what we encountered, because basically then you just bring the cars down pit road, red flag the race, and tell people to seek shelter. But as you mentioned, we were right in the middle of our pregame warm-ups, pregame introductions, and we have meteorologists up in the control tower, also national weather emergency personnel, and the radar system that they follow up there is pretty sophisticated. And so anytime there is a lightning strike that is documented within an 8-mile radius of the racetrack, that's our go time. And certainly they were tracking that, a long time before that. And so, but once it gets in the 8-mile radius of the track, that is when you go to your plan where you suspend all activities that's going on. You tell the fans to seek shelter, and you kind of put that whole operation into place. You don't necessarily tell fans where to go, but you just tell them to seek shelter and do what they think is in their own best interest. And so that happened not once, but twice on Sunday. And the first time, like you said, it was right when we were starting to get into the meat of driver introductions. And the second time was when we had people loaded up in the Grand Marshal cars and we were getting ready to go off pit road. So, we get the communications from the tower, and there's several people involved, obviously NASCAR. We had a couple folks from ISC up in the tower, and then the phone call came down to me and said, "Hey, we're at go time. We need to implement our next steps." And so that's when, you have PA announcements, you have social media, you have announcements on the vision boards, you have announcements in the garage, throughout the campgrounds, and those types of things. I think we certainly learned some things from all of this, but I think by and large we did a pretty good job of communicating everything and got through it the best we could.
And once you did get going, Kerry, we had a good race, as we said, and it's interesting, I think, about the way people react at the end of these races, and you get the feeling every time you see a winner, especially we saw this here this weekend with Brad Keselowski. Not only is he a gracious winner, but they have a reverence for a win at Darlington, unlike any other track, I would think, not named Daytona.
Well, I think you're right, Will. That's a great point you build, and I was talking to Brad afterwards in Victory Lane. He was ecstatic. He told me he thinks this might be the biggest win of his career, and that's saying a lot because the guy's won a championship before and those types of things. So, everybody wants to win the Daytona 500, and rightfully so. That's a resume builder. That's a career changer. That's our Super Bowl. But I can tell you this, I'm convinced that right behind the Daytona 500 is the Bojangles Southern 500. People want to win that. And it'd been 43 years. I didn't know this until the other night. 43 years since Penske had won at Darlington. And that's a long time, between wins. And so they finished 1-2 the other night. But you're right. We consider ourselves to be one of the majors. in golf, you got the majors, and tennis, you got the Grand Slam, and certainly in horse racing, you have the Triple Crown. And I certainly think Darlington Raceway fits all of that criteria.
Well, it's interesting and ironic that you had the throwback paint jobs and you had a throwback contest because there was Ford and Chevy duking it out, and typical of Darlington, but it happens at other raceways too.
Right.
That the guy with the best ride didn't win.
Well, that's right. Larson let's face it, Kyle Larson had the best car for the majority of the evening. It looked like that he was going to be very, very tough to overtake. And that last pit stop, he bobbled a little bit. I think for whatever reason, his car wasn't set up like he wanted it to be that last run. And so the 2 car was running like a rocket ship. That was the best he'd been all night. And, he'd really been running up in the top 3 or 4 most of the night anyhow. So he was able to tune that as Rusty Wallace likes to say, that hot rod, and get it to where it needed to be. And something I think, Phil, and I think you and I have talked about this before at Darlington, it's a long race.
Yeah.
It's 500 miles. And so, how many times have we seen it, Phil, where you got a dominant car over the first, let's say, 400 and, 20, 30 miles, and then all of a sudden, that last 50, 60 miles, somebody that's been laying in the weeds, so to speak, just takes over. And that's kind of what happened with Keselowski, I thought. The other night, I thought he was very, very patient, and he seized the opportunity.
But here's the other thing. I mean, that race basically came down to a foot. It was that race down pit road, and whoever came out first to have the number 1 restart position was going to win the race, probably. Let's just reverse it, though, with your knowledge and your insight. If Larson had won the race off pit road to hold on to the number 1 spot, do you think he had enough to hold off, would have had enough to hold off Keselowski over the last 19 laps?
Well, that's a great question. Maybe, but listening to his comments after the race, he said his car was the loosest it had ever been the whole race coming off that last pit stop. So whatever adjustments they made on that last pit stop, they weren't the adjustments that he needed to have to make that car a race-winning car. So I think it would have been exciting. I think it would have been a heck of a close finish there, but I kind of think that the way that the 2 car was running, he could have maybe caught Larson. We'll never know. But I think it also goes to the fact that NASCAR is much more of a team sport than people give it credit to be, because there was a little bobble that they had, like I said, coming off pit road, and like you said, it was about a foot and a half that he won that race, and that was the best pit stop that the 2 car had all night, and they nailed it when they had to.
Wish we had more time, but does it break your heart about Martin Truex not having a ride for next year?
Well, that certainly is something that you don't like to see. We kind of heard rumors of it several weeks ago, and it's unfortunate maybe that the news about the 5-hour energy hadn't come in the first quarter of this year instead of here just recently. So you hate that, because that was a cool story, a cool deal with Bernard Truex. But I'm sure Martin will find himself a ride. But it'll be interesting to see how that all plays out. But yeah, that's a tough deal there for sure.
KT, lock the gates for another year. Go on vacation. And we'll talk to you next week about Indy post race. But congratulations, everybody, once again. Great job.
Hey, thanks a lot, guys. I appreciate it.
Kerry Tharp, president of Darlington. Hard to believe the Southern 500 has come and gone for another year. We'll be right back.
These guys, they never sleep. Check them out on the web at SportsTalkSC.com. Now, more of Sports Talk on the South Carolina Radio Network.
I tell you what, the back and forth banter we've had during the breaks,
It's fantastic.
You've been teaching me about the Jewish faith. I've been teaching you about the Catholic faith, and we'll probably know more about each other by the end of that.
I'm very faithful to the fact that we're trying to educate one another.
Yes. We'll educate you on our poll question, which comes to you at sportstalksc.com. We ask you basically the results for USC and Clemson this weekend. Do you think they both win? Do you think they both lose? Do you think Clemson wins and USC loses? Or USC wins and Clemson loses? The results as follows. 48% of you surveyed think that Clemson wins and USC loses. 23% of you think USC wins and Clemson loses. And 25% of you think that both will win. Only 2.5% of you think both will lose.
How about this? Looking ahead to basketball, Wofford
we have to
put out its it's coming. Wofford put out its schedule for this coming year, and of course they'll have their SoCon games and all that. But look at the non-league games the Terriers are going to play this year. Of course, they're going to open up at home with North Carolina. Then, now, I'm not including all their non-league games. These are just the big ones. They're going to go to Stanford. They're going to go to Oklahoma. They're going to play at USC here, South Carolina. They're going to go to Kansas. And they're going to go to Mississippi State. So Coach Mike Young, not afraid to take on the big boys, mix them in with the other non-league games they have.
You got one win over North Carolina, and all of a sudden you think you're a Giant Slayer now. That's how it's
well,
happening.
I mean, he's gotten some years where he's made the tournament. The thing is that you
trying to make it as an at-large with all these games.
Yeah,
Come on now.
well, you figure out
if he runs the table.
Easy, Sally.
I don't know about running the table,
Sally.
but I will say this: if they win the Southern Conference regular season and the tournament, they should get as high as a 12th seed with that schedule.
Absolutely. Had a caller off the air asking about the rankings for the 5A teams. This is according to the High School Sports Report. So it's Dutch Fork ranked number 1, followed by Fort Dorchester, Dorman, Gaffney, and Burns. Then Berkeley, T.L. Hanna, Hillcrest, Sumter, and Lexington. That's your top 10. While we have the time, I'll go through the other classes. Hartsville is number 1, followed by Myrtle Beach. That's shaping up to be a dandy run to the finish, and South Point. Belton, Honeypath, and Greer. By the way, Will, if I run across if you hear me mention a top 10 team that you want to adopt, be sure to jump up.
That's not nice.
North Myrtle Beach is 6. Marlboro. How about Marlboro County? You can be the Marlboro man.
No, thanks.
Westwood is 8. Lancaster is 9, and North Augusta is 10. 3A, it's Dillon, then Chester. I just like the name Chester. Chester reminds me of Gunsmoke. Remember Gunsmoke? Remember the TV show Gunsmoke?
Chester.
Dennis Weaver. Chester Good.
Chester reminds me of the Cheetos, Cheetah, from the Cheetos snacks.
Never heard of it.
You've seen Cheetos, yes?
I've heard of Chester's fried chicken at various truck stops along the interstate. You ever eaten them?
You've heard of the snack, the cheese flavored snack Cheetos. Their mascot
I have. I've never heard of Chester related to Cheetos.
That he's their mascot, Chester Cheetah.
Chapman, which is, of course, the alma mater now of the 2 receivers who are tied on the USC all-time receivers list somewhere in the top 10, Toby Cates and Debo Samuel. Number 3, Gilbert is 4, Wade Hampton of Hampton is 5, then it's Seneca, Woodruff. How about Academic Magnet as your favorite school?
I wasn't good enough academically.
Newberry and Crescent at number 10. In 2A, Abbeville, boy, are they great. Barnwell is 2, Carver's Bay, Bamberg Earhart, Southside Christian, Woodland, Whale Branch, kind of resembles your body?
Not at all. Not even close.
Do you know where Whale Branch is?
I have no idea.
It's near Beaufort.
Okay.
It's outside of Beaufort.
Okay.
Because
I know where Beaufort is.
The school sits on the Whale Branch River.
Interesting.
Or is it the Whale River and it's a branch, or the Whale Branch River? They sit on a body of water. Andrew Jackson and Chesterfield. See, now somebody needs to this high school sports report ranking is done by Billy Baker. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Hot call.
He skipped number 8. Well Branch was 7, and Andrew Jackson was 9, and Chesterfield was 10.
Nobody's tied for 7.
No, there's no ties. He just skipped number 8. I don't know why.
Maybe,
and then
maybe,
1A.
Maybe he went to Whale Branch. Couldn't count. I don't know.
Lamar is one. You know who came from Well Branch?
Hmm.
Clemson defensive tackle Pinckney.
Oh, Niles Pinckney.
That's how I know where I went to his announcement, his commitment announcement. That's how I know where Well Branch is. Lamar is one, followed by C.E. Murray, Lakeview, Wagner, Sally, and Dixie, and St. John's, Blackville, Hilda, Timmonsville, Baptist Hill, and Great Falls, who just followed us on Twitter. Thank you, the good folks at Great Falls, the football team. You're now following us on Twitter. Good to have you aboard.
Evan writes us on Twitter about our whole question. He says Carolina has a better chance than A&M simply because. I don't know what that means, simply because.
Because. Hey, do you think SEC officials will try and screw Clemson on Saturday night?
USC officials will try to screw
Oh, that's
Clemson.
right. It'll be AC. You think ACC officials will try and screw Texas A&M on Saturday night?
Well, Jimbo may think so.
He'll probably think there'll be some sort of
That's right.
medicine.
You know,
to be
that is
paid.
one of the things that the NCAA just should get away from, identifying officials by
Conference
leagues.
affiliation.
Yeah, I mean, it just leads to people being
Well, do it.
skeptical.
They should do what they do in the college game. Have them do it by region. They're not bound by conference affiliation in basketball.
You mean in basketball?
Yeah.
Yeah, but you know what? There are still officials who are known as ACC refs and SEC
They are,
refs
but
because they work mostly those games.
Well, there are some that are like Carl Hess, who used to work ACC games, who are no longer invited by the ACC because of his current transgressions.
Well,
but he does do SEC.
As I said before, Dabo called the winning play, or whoever called the winning play in the championship game for Clemson. They figured out in the Big 12 they don't call the pick play. So they use the pick play. If you watch Big 12 games, watch it.
Yeah, it's because they like offense.
M for Gamecock on Twitter writes at us, Jimbo ain't scared of Dabo, especially since this team is better than that awful FSU team on my TV last night.
We were talking about ACC hoops. We had a visit from Brad Brownell.
Oh, yeah.
During the regular availability of Dabo Sweeney. Before that, we had some Brad Brownell. And the one thing I think that came out of his availability with us, we'll play a little bit more of it later in the week, but he conceded that they are going to have to play a little bit differently than they did last year without Gabe DeVoe as the high-volume three-point shooting scorer, despite the fact that both Marquise Reed and Sheldon Mitchell are good, proficient three-point shooters. They need to diversify their offense, which is only something that I've been saying and pounding into the ground until the cows come home all last year. They need to get the ball in more to Elijah Thomas. You'll see more from Amir Sims in the perimeter, and maybe one of those newcomers, or whether it's a newcomer to the offense that's already on the team from last year or somebody among the freshmen. They need to find another scorer and find a way to get them the basketball.
They'll be okay as long as he sticks with his guns, which he went away from, and that is, first and foremost, his teams are defensive teams. They play strong defense.
And, you know, you look at their team from last year, and of course, they lost Dante Grantham. My goodness, imagine how good they would have been had he stayed healthy. But you had a bunch of guys having career years. Had a bunch of guys putting together career numbers, DeVoe being one of them. I mean, this guy, when he came to Clemson as a freshman, I hate to say it, but the media just sort of, not going to say laugh, but it was like, why would Clemson recruit this guy? He was chubby. He wasn't going to, it didn't look like he was going to play very much. You talk about a guy that worked his tail off to get in shape and to develop. We knew he could shoot, but nobody thought he had a good enough game or the physical makeup to be able to play in the ACC. And man, did he turn it around and prove everybody wrong by the time he was a senior. You could see it coming some as a junior, and then as a senior, he really turned it up.
I hope he figures out some sort of professional opportunity. Just to, we got some summer league work, but
did he not go overseas somewhere? Maybe
I have not heard anything left on him.
Okay.
Last note on Florida State, though, it is very difficult when you break in a new team and you're breaking in a new offense, and Bud Foster is standing on the other sideline, because it's almost like he was in their playbook.
Unbelievable. Who would you rather have to D up for one game, Bud Foster or Brent Venables?
Pass.
Flip a coin.
I go with Venables.
John Chavis.
Why not make myself
John
popular?
Chavis while he was at A&M? Too soon? No.
I go with
Way too
Venables.
soon.
I go with Venables because he's the only guy I've seen that figured out the wishbone or option.
Absolutely. Yeah. All right, guys. Enjoyed another Talking Tuesday.
We'll see you tomorrow in Aiken.
Aiken is where we will be. And thank you, Brian. Thank you, Pro. Thank you, Will. Have a great night, everybody. See you tomorrow.